I want to begin by thanking Louisiana Parole Project for helping to facilitate this episode. We look forward to sharing more about who they are and the pivotal role they played in making this episode happen. Also to note, the following episode deals with adult content. Please use discretion. Welcome to part 1 of our final episode for Shadow Clock's first season. If you've listened to the very first episode of Shadow Clock, then you've already met Bob Scheiblein, an 80-year-old white man who proudly calls himself a bank robber. Normally, I wouldn't introduce someone by their rap sheet, but Bob wore that past like a badge. He ended up with a 15-year sentence for bank robbery and served a total of 9 years, 5 of which were at Alcatraz. And he loved to tell that story like it was straight out of Hollywood. And while Bob's story was thrilling and even funny at times, when I finished that episode, I couldn't stop thinking about another man. His name is Ramson Miller, and after hearing his story, I knew I had to bookend season 1 with another episode about serving time. This time from the perspective of a Black man born and raised in New Orleans. Here's Ramson telling me about the moment his life changed forever.
1998, my life as an adult changed. I was actually 34 years old when I went to prison for the distribution of marijuana, right? I got in that police call September the 29th and standing in front of that judge and hearing him saying 25 years, behind a $10 bag of weed. That is something that is unimaginable for somebody to believe. But that's what happened to me.
I met Ramson about 2.5 months after he was released from prison. He had served 23 and a half years on a 25-year sentence and was released about 1.5 years before his 60th birthday. To give you an understanding of Ramson's 60-plus-year life story, this episode weaves together not just the conversations we had when we met in Baton Rouge in 2022, but also pieces of our phone calls from over the past 3 years. Much of what Ramson says isn't easy to hear, and what I'm asking listeners to do is to simply listen with not just an open mind, but a willingness to have an inner dialogue full of curiosity and questions. I'm Katie Mahalik, and this is Shadow Clock.
So that's the best way for me to tell that story.
And
yeah.
Okay, now this is a really nerdy question, but did you have to practice on somebody, or did you just go for it?
We practice on the dummy.
No way.
Yeah, we on the dummy.
Wait, like a live dummy or like a dummy?
A dummy,
No, I didn't know, but that's how most of this conversation with Ramson is gonna go. Ramson's about to tell me how he learned to pickpocket when he was just 7 years old. I'm going to bring you back to that story in a bit, but I wanted to start off with that audio clip because I feel like it describes the two of us perfectly. To give you a quick visual of what we look like standing next to each other, besides the obvious difference in skin color, Ramson towers over me. He's 6'2", and I'm 5'2¼ inches. And conversationally, I couldn't possibly sound more nerdy when next to him. And Ramson, he's just so relaxed and cool and pleasant, as if he doesn't have a care in the world. And that no care in the world attitude, that was what I was trying to figure out from the moment Ramson and I met. His entire way of being really stopped me in my tracks. How was it that a man who did 23 and a half years over circumstances tied to a $10 bag of weed, still laughing and smiling, with this happy-go-lucky glint in his eye? During the next 2 days, Ramson would take me, this over-smiley, headphone-wearing white girl sitting in front of him with a microphone, pad of paper, and pencil through a 60-year-long journey, detailing all the tiny moments of his life that led up to his incarceration of 23 and a half years. As with every episode I create, I try to be sure to tell the story from my guest's point of view as much as possible. And when I do put in my 2 cents, I try to be clear that it's my own editorial note I just threw into the mix. But it's this episode in particular that I'm overly aware that the lens I approach this story with is white. And because of Ramson and the continued conversations I have with so many other people in my life, I realize that I'm still learning in how we relate to each other in regard to race. So to Ramson, thank you for talking with me, teaching me, and telling me your story. And with that, I'd like to start off right where Ramson's journey begins, November 23rd, 1963.
See, I was born the day after President Kennedy got killed because my mama went and laid after hearing about the assassination.
This little anecdote of how Ramson came into the world comes up a lot during our conversations, which I think is interesting when considering both JFK and especially Bobby Kennedy's role in advocating for civil rights and Ramson's own fight against racial inequality. Born and raised in New Orleans, Ramson grew up in a life 180 degrees different from my own. And knowing this, I want to tangent for a moment to compare our early years because I think one of the best ways to understand someone's perspective is by seeing where their life overlaps with yours and where it doesn't. Me, I grew up in Davison, Michigan, a mostly white middle-class suburb outside of Flint, where it felt like everyone worked for General Motors. But both my parents were educators, so when the auto industry collapsed, their jobs were safe. And after my dad died, his life insurance allowed my mom to stay home for a while. We didn't struggle like many others in town. My siblings and I had food, clothes, a big backyard, and long summer days where we played kick the can till dark. And when we came in for the night, we each had our own cozy rooms to snuggle up into as we whisked ourselves into dreams that took place in the sugary suburban bliss that coated our very white reality. To put it mildly, this couldn't have been more different from Ramson's childhood.
You know, my dad had 27 children by 5 different women because my mom started getting pregnant at age 14 for him. By the time she realized what he was actually doing, she had 9 children.
With 9 brothers and sisters, space was tight and money was tighter. I asked Ramson to talk to me about what it was like growing up in New Orleans with that many siblings.
Well, in the project, right, you generally get 3 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. Well, we only had 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and a bathroom. So 9 kids shared that space, mostly with bunk beds. You know, 2 of us slept in the same bed. When you are living under the strictest conditions of poverty, you have to do what it takes to survive.
And Ramson did. He found ways to get what he and his family needed. His first job was at age 6, helping bricklayers fill up buckets with mortar and bricks.
6 and 7 years old, I tried to find lil hustles, you know, putting mortar in the bucket and tying it on a string so that the guys that was doing the bricklaying could pull it up on the scaffold. I got 25 cents a bucket by putting bricks in the bucket. My mama didn't have everything to provide us the amenities, right? So we had to go and get it for ourselves. And hustling, right? Stealing is something that is a part of that.
Down where Ramson was growing up, the freight trains carrying goods would cut through and make a stop between 2 different New Orleans projects. It was during these stops that things happened.
The trains, they would actually stop between the 2 projects. There was actually loading and unloading goods at the depot that is further up, right, on Press Street. They would open the doors, but because the trains would be so long, the doors would be open. And when the people from conductors and stuff walked off, we was hustling.
I asked Ramson more about this during a phone call, and I was sucked into how he talked about it with the same kind of nostalgia I talked about the adventures of my own childhood. But while I was playing boxcar children in the woods, Ramson was actually climbing into real boxcars in the dead of night. Here's a piece of that phone conversation.
Man, they had loot. They had kids. They used to have everything in there from clothes to cornflakes.
And they would just like, tell me about how you were the little one. Like, tell me again how they hoisted you up.
Well, you know, they used to stick me in the car to go see what was in there.
Because Ramson was the smallest of the group, he was the one that was always pushed up into the boxcar to check out what was inside. If my brother, sister, and I were climbing into a boxcar in the middle of the night, we would have been total chickens, which led me to my next question I had to ask.
Were you scared?
Nah, it's a part of the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was part of the fun, shit. You know, but I was adventurous also. We was 4 kids in one of the poorest, poverty-stricken neighborhoods, right? Living off welfare.
And he wasn't just stealing from the boxcars.
The food stamps that they was providing at that time was inadequate for 9 children. So I'd go into a store, right, and steal some clothes so that I can go sell it to have food for my family to eat. The same way my sister needs some new shoes on her feet. I go get my sister and bring her to the store and buy her some shoes. Because my mama don't have the money to actually buy 9 pair of shoes. My mama don't know nothing about that. All she knows is that my sister got some new shoes on. If my mom ain't know, she don't know it, right? She's just glad I'm at home and I'm safe. She didn't want me stealing. No, that's not who my mother were, right? So for me to come home with 2 bags of groceries, she's not gonna ask me where I got the money for the groceries from, right? She's just glad I'm at home and I'm safe. It's groceries. That's how, a hustler do things. And that's the actual style of a hustler.
Ramson reflected on being 5, 6, and 7 years old a lot during our conversations together. It was during one of our phone calls that he told me another story that gave me a glimpse into his world and his relationship with his mother.
I started reading to my mom at 5 years old, the New Orleans newspaper. My mom couldn't read as good as I could at 5 years old.
And did your mom ask you to read the paper, or did you just voluntarily read the paper?
Shit, I just was reading it. I started reading it out loud to her, because she didn't think I knew how to read.
Who taught you?
Huh? Nobody. Shit. I can't honestly tell you how I learned how to read. The light just came on. The light just came on. And shit, I've been educating myself ever since.
Did she love when you did that? She must have loved that.
Well, my mom was very proud of my educational ability.
And as much as he liked to read, Ramson liked to learn. And it was this affinity for knowledge, along with his intellect, that would become integral to his survival before his incarceration and once inside. And knowing this, I wanted to know more about what he was like in school.
I ain't gonna sit here and lie to you. At age 10, I was sentenced to Louisiana Training Institution in Monroe, Louisiana, where I got most of my education through the incarceration system in the state of Louisiana. I am one of those that is fortunate enough to say I am educated because of people taking an interest in me, but I didn't actually go through the public school system.
But Ramson was actually sent away much earlier than age 10. At just 7 years old, he was sent to Melanie Boys' home for something that brings us back to the opening moment you heard between Ramson and me.
I pickpocketed the police. I didn't actually know he was the police, but I stole his while and tap dancing on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, so while Ramson was tap dancing on Bourbon Street, lifting wallets from unsuspecting passerbyers and cops, I was tap dancing in my basement with a pair of tap shoes my mom had bought at a yard sale. Never took a lesson. I was terrible. And this got me thinking, kids learn most everything from lessons. So I wondered where Ramson learned to pickpocket. And once again, that takes us back to our first conversation I played for you.
Well, you learn all kinds of skills in the streets. So that's the best way for me to tell that story.
And
yeah.
Okay, now this is a really nerdy question, but did you have to practice on somebody, or did you just go for it?
We practiced on the dummy.
No way.
Yeah, we on the dummy.
Wait, like a live dummy or like a dummy?
A dummy, you stuff it with cotton.
No.
Right, and you put the wallet in his pocket. That's how I learned how to pickpocket.
No way.
Yeah, one of the best actually taught me how to do the crane and the dip.
Okay, so you're doing this at 7. You go to this boys' home. Did you meet friends there?
Well, yeah, I got friends for life. One of the best pickpocketers I ever been with was Conrad White. We was in Midland Boys' home together.
The home was founded in 1933 to house, quote, orphans and troubled children. By the time Ramson ended up there, it had merged with what was called, and I quote again, the Colored Waifs Home for Boys, which was actually the same home Louis Armstrong was sent to at age 11, not much older than Ramson was when he arrived. To be honest, when I asked Ramson about what the home was like, it was hard to get a clear answer, and I did ask a few times. From the few words he had to say about it, I imagine it wasn't the nicest of places.
What was that like? It seems like it'd be scary. Well,
I had never been scared of nothing, so it wasn't scary. It just was middle of the boys' home. I ran away from middle of the boys' home 26 times. After that, I just ran the streets, and my mom didn't have the ability to prevent me from going out and doing things. And the people that I met was also hustling to survive. So I picked up some of the tools of the streets at a very young age.
was there a school at the boys' home? Like, did you learn? Okay, there was.
School, but see, I went to school.
Yeah.
I attacked the books at a young age. I'm not saying that I didn't go to class. I just went to class a little too far, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I went to the whole class. And I always been able to read and remember because my memory is so intact. I escaped from the boys' home because that's not where I wanted to be, and I just took to the street life.
Did you end up, when you would leave, living on the streets as a young kid then, alone?
I done slept in the streets before, yeah.
Yeah. What was the youngest you did that at?
Man, 7.
To be taking care of yourself like that at age 7, it was so hard for me to imagine, which brings me to one last story that Ramson told me over the phone about his childhood. This one takes place at a bakery in the French Quarter. Since the bakers started work as early as 2 or 3 a.m., preparing goods for the day, it was the one place that was open and could provide a safe haven for Ramson when he was on the run from the boys' home. Not only did Ramson hide out there to avoid running into the police on the street, but he picked up skills.
Shit, I learned how to bake and hang out with old men in the baker shop on Decatur Street.
You learned to bake with some men in a bakery?
Yeah.
Why were you there?
Shit, because I was running away from middle of the boys' home and I couldn't go to my house in the project because the police bring you back to Miller. Big Ron? No, I'm chilling, bro.
This happens often when Ramson and I are on the phone, especially when he's sitting outside. To be honest, I don't think there's been a single conversation I've had with him where someone doesn't walk by and say hi.
I'm going to be out here for a while. Yeah.
Ramson has a ton of friends. In fact, building connections and bonding with people are things he prides himself on.
Have a wonderful day.
Oh, no. Are we leaving? Are you saying that to me or someone else?
Oh, I said it to one of my neighbors. Now, I'm not hanging up on you people passing by, and I'm speaking to them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Later.
As Ramson entered adulthood, things didn't get easier.
When I slept in front of City Hall in Duncan Plaza, I was homeless. They had like a little gazebo, and that's where I slept in, on a cardboard box. So I know what it feels like to be homeless. And I was homeless for almost a year, not because I was on drugs or anything like that. And I worked at temp jobs, but the wages was not sustainable for me to go somewhere in New Orleans and get an apartment.
I asked Ramson more about the temp service he was working at.
Temp Today, that was the name of the company. And they paid every day, but you couldn't always get a job assignment because they had so many people out of work.
In 1991, the U.S. was recovering from a mild recession that began in 1990, so it made sense that work was hard to find. But Ramson has always been resourceful, and he took up work doing manual labor and painting houses.
I actually knew how to paint a whole house, interior and exterior. Most of the people at that time wanted to pay $5 an hour to a black man to do a job that they'll pay a white person $15 an hour.
In 1991, the average wall painter in New Orleans was earning anywhere between $10 and $15 an hour, which was good money considering the minimum wage was $4.25 at the time. This also meant Ramson was getting offered more than the minimum at $5 an hour and up to $10 less an hour than what a white person was getting to do the same job. I thought about Ramson next to his white counterparts, many who were also grappling to make ends meet themselves. And then I thought about the added barriers and injustices Black and brown people are facing every day, over and over and over again. Just thinking about it all makes me feel hopeless and exhausted, and I'm not even dealing with it firsthand.
What I care more about is equal pay for everyone. I can't actually say I couldn't get a job, right? Because I refused to work for somebody for $5 an hour. And I had choices, right? So if I can't get a job that is willing to pay me a living wage, then most likely I'm gonna find other means, right? Take care of the bills that is necessary to be paid for me to have a basic life.
This all made me think of Bob, the white guy mentioned at the beginning of this episode, who went to prison for robbing banks. Both Bob and Ramson grew up in severe poverty, and both took matters into their own hands to get themselves out, but in such different ways.
I started selling drugs because I was sleeping on the ground. And I had to fault myself because those was actual choices that I made for my life.
It's worth noting one of those choices here. One part of Ramson's life he shared with me was his conviction for simple burglary, which is more or less entering a building, vehicle, or property with the intent to steal.
I was sentenced for simple burglary in November the 10th of 1983. And at that time, they had educational programs for short-timers. Short-time is a person that's serving under a 10-year sentence.
Ramson ended up doing 4 years for that conviction, and while inside, he took advantage of educational programs that were offered. I'm pointing this out because his desire to take advantage of educational opportunities, more of which you'll hear about in part 2, gives us a sense of who he is, as does something else he brought up when we were talking.
I had never had no gun. No, I never had no need for no gun.
Never.
Never. I had never had. I can go anywhere in New Orleans I want to. I ain't got to have nothing.
Ramson telling me this surprised me, considering how common it is to own a gun in the U.S. And I am deviating here because, again, I think this helps us get to know who Ramson is, including this last bit he shared.
I can't actually lie and say that I haven't participated in criminal activity. When I started selling drugs, right, the money started rolling in. I was able to go and get me off of the streets and into an apartment. But not once did I force anyone to come to me and buy some drugs. I can't sell something to someone that I ain't gonna use myself.
That statement comes from its own pivotal moment in Ramson's life, which I'll share in just a second. Full disclosure, it's a bit stomach-turning, but it's a moment that helped me better understand the world Ramson was living in and how he felt about it all.
The incident that stopped me from selling crack was I went in the woman's house that I wanted to have sex with, and all her water was turned off. And I had to use the bathroom, so I went to her toilet, right? And I made the mistake of pulling the lid out. And it had feces, and other things in it. That turned my stomach. And I had sold crack since.
As I listened to this story, Ramson seamlessly ushered me into his perspective of the crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s and early 90s.
I saw the damage that crack was actually doing to our people that day. That was my realization with it. That crack cocaine will take everything out you and then ask for some more. And when you get that, you're still not satisfied. And this was a beautiful young lady, right? That was cracked out. And I couldn't take it no more, so I stopped. I began to realize that I wasn't gonna sell anything to anyone that I wasn't gonna use myself. From that day forward, right, I have never messed with nothing but marijuana, and the transformative side of all this is that I began to realize that it was time to take the responsibility and lay the blame where it lies, on me.
So Ramson stopped selling hard drugs, but like he said, he did continue to sell marijuana. Eventually, he ended up with a few possession charges, one of which turned into a felony for 4 marijuana cigarettes. He was sentenced to 2 years suspended with 18 months probation, meaning as long as he didn't violate the probation, he wouldn't do any time. But it's this felony over a substance now legal in many states that is going to become pivotal in Ramson's story. But before I get into why that felony matters, I want to take us into Ramson's last arrest, the one that sets this whole story into motion. I'll do my best to give you a simplified version of how it all went down. As you know by now, Ramson has worked the French Quarter more or less his entire life. I'd say it's safe to say he knows a lot of people. But ironically, it was an encounter with a man Ramson told me he never met before who's going to play a big role in Ramson's story. Even though it's public record, I'm going to call this guy Mike Jacobs, just for privacy's sake. It's this guy Jacobs and 2 undercover cops who would change the course of Ramson's life forever. We're in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. It's September in 1998. And as always, the French Quarter is alive. Even though it's not Mardi Gras, beads hang from balconies and window fronts that adorn both sides of the street. Music pulses through the alleyways, as do tourists and locals alike. 2 undercover officers, posing as tourists from Baton Rouge, are hanging out when they encounter Jacobs. In short, they ask him where they can buy some weed. Jacobs says he can help them out and leads them around the French Quarter a bit before he brings them to a bar, the Double Player, where Ramson is that night. Jacobs, still unaware the tourists are undercover, asks for cash to make the purchase on their behalf. And unbeknownst to him, they give him a pre-recorded $20 bill. Jacobs leaves the 2 cops outside and goes into the bar where he presumably approaches Ramson to arrange a sale, specifically for weed. It's at this point in the story that Ramson's account and the cops' version of events diverge. Whatever the truth is, the 2 perspectives intertwine with a mix of agreement and contradiction about what happens next. More or less, Ramson says he ended up with the Mark 20 because Jacobs asked if he could break a 20, and so Ramson broke it for 2 10s. And both Jacobs and the cops agree that Ramson did in fact break the 20. But then things get convoluted. The cops say Jacobs broke the 20, walked out of the bar, and told them that Ramson would be out shortly to hand them the bag. At this point, Jacobs also mentions that he's keeping the other 10 for a finder's fee. But Ramson says he never went outside, let alone handed off a bag of weed to anyone involved in this story. He says if he was going to break a 20 to sell weed to Jacobs, then he would have just handed him the weed himself.
That don't make no sense. If I was gonna sell weed to somebody, I would have sold it to the person when he came with the money.
The cops say otherwise. Their statement reads that after Jacobs left the premise, Ramson did step outside the bar and hand off the weed to one of them who was working undercover. In the end, whatever the story is, 3 truths remain. 1, the operation was a sting. 2, Ramson ended up with the marked $20 bill. And yes, Ramson was selling weed in the French Quarter. However, if he didn't sell to these undercover cops, it makes his whole story that much more painful because, as we all know by now, Ramson is going to do a lot of time tied to a would-be sale of a $10 bag of weed.
Police came in the bar and arrested me.
In the bar?
In the bar and arrested me. They didn't arrest me outside. I was sitting on the bar stool. But the real deal was that this person pointed me out to the police as being the person that sold weed in the French bars. And yeah, I had weed on me because I was selling weed in the French Quarter.
They took Ramson down to the station.
When they brought me into the booking center for the distribution charge, the person searched my shoes and lifted up my soul and discovered that that's where the weed was at.
What they found was 15 small bags of marijuana. They charged him with possession and the intent to distribute.
The distribution It's actually for $10. They only said I sold them $10 worth of weed.
And when you hear Ramson talk about this next moment, the moment that puts this whole story into motion, it's evident he didn't see what was coming.
I got in that police car September the 29th, 1998, and standing in front of that judge and hearing him saying 25 years, behind a $10 bag of weed. That is something that is unimaginable for somebody to believe. But that's what happened to me. To this day, that's when my life changed. As far as going to prison and doing 23 and a half years for a $10 bag of weed. It was disbelief. That's the only thing that can go. That's the only thing that can go through your mind. That this can't be real. Behind $10?
But here's the thing. While the catalyst for Ramson's story is built around that said sale of a $10 bag of weed, it was that earlier felony conviction for those 4 marijuana cigarettes that made him vulnerable to such harsh sentencing. You may have heard of the 3 strikes you're out or habitual offender laws. Many states have them. Under these laws, if someone's a repeat offender, that next conviction can trigger a much harsher sentence, sometimes even life, over just minor charges. These laws, which have been shown to disproportionately affect Black and brown populations, are meant to target repeat offenders. But in practice, they often sweep up people for relatively small crimes. And many don't even realize they're susceptible to an enhancement until they're standing in front of a judge, which I can't help but mention seems pretty counterproductive if the goal is to deter crime in the first place. And as you've heard from Ramson himself, that's exactly what happened. He had no idea he was vulnerable to a sentence enhancement until his day in court. All this to say, had Ramson fully understood Louisiana's 15529.1 statute back when he was charged with that felony for 4 marijuana cigarettes, he would have known from the start that he was facing a possible 15 to 60-year prison sentence, even for a crime involving just marijuana. As I bring you into part 2, I want to end this episode by giving you a glimpse into those final moments Ramson experienced in the courtroom, which he had recapped for me during another phone conversation. We'd been talking about the role he had felt God played in his life, and then this came up.
God been with me for 60 years, and we still going strong, Ms. Mahali.
Were you ever angry with God for allowing you to go to prison for 23 years like that?
Nah.
I don't know. I don't understand how it works.
Listen, when the judge told me he was sentencing me to 25 years in prison, I bust out laughing in the courtroom. The lawyer told me, no, stop laughing. Because hey, that's what he told me, stop laughing. Ma'am, I've been dealing with injustice my whole life. I know racial inequality and economic inequality, and the judicial system has always been against African American people, man. There ain't nothing new shit, but I knew God was gonna be with me every step of the way.
Be sure to catch part 2 of this episode to hear what comes next. Even after 3 years of working on it, Ramson's story still blows me away. He is a true testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and I'm honored to be able to share the rest of his story with you. Shadow Clock is an independent, out-of-pocket podcast. If you're moved by the stories that you hear, you can show your support by contributing to our show. Go to www.shadow-clock.com and click Contribute. All contributions to Shadow Clock will go to promoting Season 1 and helping us bring you Season 2 as soon as possible. This episode of Shadow Clock was created, produced, and edited by Adam Gould and me. Post-production audio is by Jessica Sturgeon. Kate Cosgrove creates original illustrations for Shadow Clock, which you can also find on our website at www.shadow-clock.com. Our fact checker for this episode is Melanie Pfizer. Location audio by Alejandro Velez. Transcriptions for this episode were done by Samari Tyler. Our Shadow Clock interns are Sri Nalan Chakravarti and Ezra Verveldi. Online motion graphics are by Dariush Diaz-Asmodee, and various episode animations are by Spencer Masternak. Music for this episode is credited to Pun5 and Artlist.io. A special thanks to composer Deuce Williams for several amazing tracks used in Part 1 and Part 2 of Ramson's story. All content contributors, composers, and individual song titles for each episode can be found on our website at www.shadow-clock.com. If you like the show, spread the word by telling someone else about Shadow Clock, and of course, by following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Shadow Clock Podcast and YouTube at Shadow Clock. For my thank yous, first and foremost, Ramson, thank you for sharing your story with me and for all your patience. A huge thank you to Adam Gould. We wouldn't have an episode without you. A big thanks to Louisiana Pearl Project, Carrie Myers, Andrew Hundley, Christy Sheremy, and April Myers. To Sarah O'Brien, I can't thank you enough for your guidance and insight in putting all the legal facts of this story together. To Carrie Donahue, thank you so much for your notes. A special thanks to the following: Alejandro Velez, Jessica Sturgeon, Kate Cosgrove, Melanie Pfizer, Christina Kersey, Blake File, Sri Nalan Chakravarti and Ezra Verveldi, Adam Zavislak, Nicholas Slusher, Gable Willis, Andrea Brooks and Serenity Brooks, Cindy Mihalik-Higgerson, Mary Brem, Miles Brem, Kathleen Russo, Carrie Donahue, Christopher O'Keefe, and the entire team at Stony Brook Podcast Incubator. And lastly, to our Shadow Clock contributors, thank you to Sue Kelko, Laura Mole, Todd Freeberg, Bob Phillips, Charlie Peters, Mary Lear, Mary Beams, Anna and Chuck Griffiths, Aaron and Julianne Frank, Todd Wojcik, Karen Loop, Colleen Holleran, and Jessica Gould. Your support has meant the world. So you don't miss a moment, make sure you join our mailing list at www.shadow-clock.com. I'm Katie Mihalik, and this is Shadow Clock.